station were sealed. Hello everyone, my name is Jessie Anderson, a manufacturing engineering manager here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California.
And I'm John Rackham, spacesuit ventilation lead for Axiom Space. This has been a highly successful mission on station, with each crew member navigating a very full slate of activities over the last 18 days, including over 30 scientific studies and over 50 outreach events. So today's live coverage is the beginning of AX-3's return trip home, Axiom Space's third mission to the International Space Station. So this webcast will follow the crew's departure from the ISS and conclude once they have exited the approach ellipsoid, which is the imaginary outer boundary of the ISS. Then, on Friday, Axiom Space and SpaceX pick back up with the live coverage starting about an hour before splashdown to share the conclusion of this mission. As of now, splashdown is currently targeting February 9th at 8:30 a.m. Eastern or 5:30 a.m. Pacific. So, for those of you following along, the AX-3 crew consists of Commander Michael Lopez Alegria, pilot Walter Vilade, and mission specialists Alper Izarachi and Marcus Want. The four of them lifted off from launch pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center on Thursday, January 18th, and arrived at the International Space Station approximately 36 hours later. And once docked to the ISS, the AX-3 crew was welcomed aboard by the Expedition 70 crew, and after a welcome ceremony that included Commander MLA awarding Walter, Alper, and Marcus with their orbital astronaut pin, the crew quickly got to work. Now, over the last 2.5 weeks, it has been such a joy and privilege to see our colleagues, our friends, working through their mission objectives, sharing their story with groups around the world, and ultimately making such an impact for their respective countries from space. And speaking for the Axiom Space teams, we could not be more proud of this crew and everything they've accomplished. So there are certainly a lot of hugs and handshakes waiting for them when they get home, and some much well-deserved rest, eventually. But before that happens, we get to share their journey back to Earth with all of you right now.
Ahead of departure, our teams look at a number of weather items. Some of the obvious ones are no rain or chance of lightning in the recovery zone, both for the safety of the crew inside of the capsule as well as the recovery teams on the water. We're also looking for wind speeds less than 10 miles per hour and relatively calm seas so that we can safely perform recovery operations, which include landing a helicopter on the recovery ship to fly our crew back to shore. Once Dragon departs station, the crew's flight home is expected to last approximately 2 days. Dragon will also execute a phasing burn to lower its orbit and line the spacecraft up with its landing locations. These four departure burns will gradually increase the distance between the spacecraft and the space station. Dragon will also execute a phasing burn to lower its orbit and line the spacecraft up with its landing location. Then the action really starts to pick up the pace with trunk separation, closure of the nose cone, a deorbit burn, re-entry, deployment of the drogue and main parachutes, and then finally splashdown off of the coast of Florida, at which point our teams will recover the AX-3 crew. Dragon is targeted to splash down off the coast of Florida on Friday, February 9th at 5:30 a.m. Pacific time, followed by the crew getting picked up at sea by one of our SpaceX's recovery vessels.
Right, and at that point, the Axiom 3 crew will undergo their first medical checks while on board the recovery vessel before flying on a helicopter back to land. From there, the crew will be flown to Houston and reunited with their teams. And this welcome home moment, in many ways, will mark the conclusion of the operational phases of this mission.
And guiding us through the action today as Dragon departs station is NASA's Public Affairs Officer Anna Schneider at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas.
Hello, Jesse. John, it's good to be with you both, and welcome to Mission Control Houston at NASA's Johnson Space Center. We're currently inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room where the team of flight controllers are being led by NASA Flight Director Judd Freeling. Earlier this morning, we brought you live coverage of hatch closure in which the Axiom 3 crew suited up and re-entered the SpaceX vehicle and closed the hatch between Dragon and the space station. We're now awaiting undocking and we'll be looking ahead to the go, no-go poll for undocking here in a few minutes. This final go, no-go poll is where the joint SpaceX and NASA teams will make their final call for Dragon to depart station.
Final go for undock once we've completed our poll down here.
We also have a question for you. We are seeing in the centerline camera is dark. Is there a light in the vestibule that we should have on, or is that not normal for undock?
Stand by, Dragon. We're checking.
You just heard some conversations between teams here on the ground and the crew aboard the Crew Dragon vehicle as they are configuring the big loop, and that is where a centralized communications can take place between the crew on the space station as well as on Dragon, along with the flight controllers here in Houston and in Hawthorne, California. Again, we're
and
awaiting...
Dragon SpaceX on the big loop for camera config. Dragon, that is expected. Once we start pulling back the umbilicals, Dragon has some steps to enable the lighting and confirm the cameras are in the right config.
Okay, thank you.
Again, we're awaiting undocking and we'll be looking ahead to the go, no-go poll for undocking here in a few minutes. And this is the poll where the joint SpaceX and NASA teams can make their final call for Dragon to depart station. This is one of many checkpoints in the return that will continue all the way up until just before the deorbit burn, and it gives mission managers multiple chances to assess the weather at the splashdown site and make sure everything is lining up before Dragon departs.
Freedom SpaceX on the big loop. Ground is go for undocking and departure. The undock sequence start is 1415 Zulu. Please confirm that you are ready and that your visors are down.
Since getting the hatches closed earlier this morning, the Axiom Mission 3 crew...
We are go for undock.
Good news, SpaceX copies.
And we just heard confirmation that the crew is go for undocking. Separation of the Dragon vehicle from the space station is set for approximately 8:20 a.m. Central, 6:20 a.m. Pacific, just a few minutes from now. At the moment, Dragon is in its final configuration before undocking, and we are waiting for mission operators to conduct their go, no-go poll on whether to move forward with this procedure. Just like during its approach to the International Space Station, Dragon's departure and deorbit is designed to be fully autonomous, requiring no action from the crew on board. The undock command is scheduled to be sent at 8:15 a.m. Central, 6:15 a.m. Pacific to begin that autonomous sequence, which takes about 4.5 minutes. While it's been a busy morning here in Mission Control Houston in anticipation of undocking, the Axiom Mission 3 crew has also been busy on board station today in the past few days preparing for their return home. Over the last few days, the astronauts have worked to pack Dragon full of cargo for the return journey. Along with our crew, Dragon will return more than 550 pounds of cargo and science back to Earth. The cargo includes 20 scientific experiments, some hardware, and other items. All of this cargo will get offloaded after we get the crew out following splashdown, and the scientific samples will be sent to researchers for final analysis. The crew also took time to get their SpaceX suits unpacked and ready for the journey home. And after the crew got suited up this morning in their launch and entry suits, the hatch was closed at 6:25 a.m. Central Time, 4:25 a.m. Pacific, and depressurization of the vestibule occurred. The vestibule is the area between the Dragon hatch and the APAS hatch on station. This depressurization process lasted about an hour to bring the vestibule down to vacuum in preparation of Dragon's departure. Teams also configured the Big Loop, which is an integrated communications loop with NASA's Mission Control team here in Houston, SpaceX's Mission Control team in Hawthorne, the crew on board the International Space Station, and the Axiom Mission 3 crew currently inside Dragon. This Big Loop allows for fully integrated communications with Dragon Freedom as the crew undocks and makes its way back to Earth. As we continue to stand by for the go, no-go poll for undocking, we can check in with the team at SpaceX and Axiom in Hawthorne.
Thanks, Anna. As Dragon awaits separation from the space station, let's properly introduce the AX-3 crew. The commander of AX-3, Michael Lopez Alegria, a dual citizen of the U.S. and Spain, is no stranger to Axiom missions, Crew Dragon, or the space station. AX-3 marks his 6th mission to space, having completed 3 space shuttle flights and a Soyuz mission as a NASA astronaut prior to commanding AX-1 with Axiom Space. And today, when not in low Earth orbit, MLA serves as Axiom Space's chief astronaut.
From the country of Italy, our pilot is Walter Vilade, and this has marked his inaugural trip to low Earth orbit. Vilade serves as the head of the Italian Air Force's representative office in the United States. He has completed cosmonaut training as a flight engineer, participated in multiple analog training missions, and flown a variety of aircraft and missions as an active flight engineer in the Italian Air Force.
And our 3rd crew member from Turkey, mission specialist Alper Iziraci, is the first Turkish astronaut in space. With 15 years of experience in a myriad of aircraft for the Turkish Air Force, Iziraci got his start in the Air Force Academy in Istanbul, Turkey, and earned a master's degree from the U.S. Air Force Institute of Technology. Additionally, he served a number of years as a commercial airline captain.
And finally, from Sweden, we have mission specialist Marcus Want. In November of 2022, Marcus was selected by the European Space Agency as an astronaut reserve. However, with the AX-3 mission, he becomes the first project astronaut in ESA's history, a new designation within their ranks.
Together, this crew represents the first all-European commercial mission to the ISS. And their efforts on this mission really continue to show what can be accomplished in low Earth orbit through the efforts of private industry. Right, so as Dragon awaits separation from the space station, let's share a bit about the teams who are working to bring this crew home.
SpaceX Mission Control, which you could see there on your screen, is based at our headquarters in Hawthorne, California. That's where our teams monitor Dragon and are checking in on all of its systems. To help make sure that the crew has a safe journey, our team in Mission Control will be monitoring the progress along the way, their entire journey back home. On console or headset are 6 key positions who are monitoring the health of the vehicle and crew. The mission director responsible for Dragon operations is in charge in the room. The person that you'll hear talking to the astronauts is the crew operations and resources engineer, or what we call the core. The other positions are focused on vehicle systems like navigation and control, avionics, software, propulsion, life support, and communications with ground segments.
And on the Axiom side, Axiom Mission Control Center, based in Houston, Texas, that you can see there on your right, is where ground teams have been facilitating and coordinating all aspects of this mission as the crew lived and worked aboard the International Space Station. Also known as MCC-A, this control center has been staffed by a flight control team 24 hours a day for the entire duration of this mission. From facilitating payloads integration between crew and principal investigators to actively scheduling and even stowage operations, each flight controller is responsible for specific aspects of this mission execution. At the head of this flight control team...
Undock sequence commanded.
And at the head of this flight control team is the Axiom operations lead, also known as Axel, and they serve as the primary interface to the MCC-H flight director at Johnson Space Center.
Umbilical demate is complete and nominal.
And with those undocking and umbilical demate calls, we'll toss it now over to Anna at Johnson Space Center in Houston.
Thanks, John. Yeah, we just heard confirmation that the undocking sequence has begun, and it began at 8:15 a.m. Central, 6:15 a.m. Pacific. This undocking sequence is fully autonomous, and the first step of that is the umbilicals retracting, which we heard the call up just a second ago. Following the retraction of the umbilical, the first set of hooks, that's 6 of the 12 total hooks, will begin to retract. The first set of 6 hooks are beginning to retract. After those have retracted, the second set of 6 hooks will retract. Following that, there will be 2 quick undock burns to physically separate Dragon from the station. This physical separation is scheduled to take place at 8:20 a.m. Central, 6:20 a.m. Eastern in just about 3 minutes. We are about 2.5 minutes into the undocking command. The undocking command is fully autonomous and takes about 4.5 minutes to fully execute to begin the physical separation from station. Again, the umbilical has already retracted, and we are standing by for confirmation that the first set of 6 hooks have retracted.
First set of hooks are open and nominal. On to the second set.
And there we have it. We just heard a call up to the crew that the first set of 6 hooks are fully open, and it was a nominal retraction, and now they are working on the second set of 6 hooks. After this second set of 6 hooks is fully retracted, Dragon will be ready to depart from the station and begin pushing itself further and further away by using its thrusters. Physical separation is planned for 2 minutes from now at 8:20 a.m. Central, 6:20 a.m. Pacific, and Dragon's initial departure from station is a little different than other docked vehicles like the Soyuz that rely on springs to push them away from the docking port. Dragon will actually execute 2 short thruster firings called undock burns to physically separate using a combination of the 12 Draco engines around the base of the capsule, with the first breaking any stiction between Dragon and the docking port, and the second slowly backing the spacecraft away from the space station. We are about 1 minute away from physical separation and 4 minutes into the undocking command.
All hooks are open.
And we just heard confirmation that the second set of 6 hooks is open, and that will begin to separate Dragon from the space station as we see those thrusters firing. Separation was confirmed at 8:20 a.m. Central, 6:20 a.m. Pacific. Again, separation of Dragon Freedom from the space station was confirmed at 8:20 a.m. Central, 6:20 a.m. Pacific, while the International Space Station flew over the South Pacific Ocean west of Ecuador. Dragon has started to push itself away from the station, and with that, the Axiom Mission 3 crew, consisting of Michael Lopez Alegria.
Depart burn 0 is complete and nominal.
Copy, SpaceX.
And with that, Commander Michael Lopez Alegria, pilot Walter Villaday, and mission specialist Alper Gezerachi and Marcus Want have completed their mission aboard the International Space Station and are making their journey home. We've had good undocking burns to physically separate from the space station, and we'll have several departure burns coming up. will continue to monitor Crew Dragon through the departure sequence as it makes its way home from the International Space Station. The first of the 4 departure burns, known as Burn 0, has already taken place, and this is a short firing of Dragon's Draco thrusters that lasted approximately 16 seconds to increase the speed that Dragon is flying away from the station and send it on a trajectory, taking it up around the orbiting laboratory. We are now about 3.5 minutes from the next departure burn, known as Departure Burn 1. Departure Burn 1, which is scheduled for approximately 6:26 a.m. Pacific, 8:26 a.m. Central Time, will increase the initial opening rate between Crew Dragon and the space station. This burn will last approximately 21 seconds long and will further the distance between Dragon Freedom and the space station. The Axiom Mission 3 crew spent about 18 days docked to the International Space Station, and during their stay, they were accompanied by the Expedition 70 crew, which remains on board following Axiom Mission 3's departure. Expedition 70 is made up of NASA astronauts Jasmine Mogbelli and Laurel O'Hara, ESA or European Space Agency astronaut Andy Mogensen, and JAXA or Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Satoshi Furukawa, along with Roscosmos cosmonauts Konstantin Borisov, Oleg Kononenko, and Nikolai Chub. The next crew to launch to the station is Crew 8, which is scheduled to launch later this month, and Crew 7 will return a short time later after a brief handover period. We are now about 1.5 minutes away from Departure Burn 1. On your screen right now, you're seeing live views of Dragon as it makes its way back to Earth and is departing the International Space Station. And we're now in a brief but expected handover between satellites. This is known as a LOS, or loss of signal. We'll get signal back in just a few moments. We are under 30 seconds away from Departure Burn 1. Again, this burn is scheduled to last approximately 21 seconds and will increase the initial opening rate between Crew Dragon and the space station. Following this burn, the crew will start to take off their spacesuits until it's time to deorbit. And we just heard confirmation that Departure Burn 1 is in progress. Following this Departure Burn 1, the Crew Dragon will exit the keep-out sphere. The keep-out sphere
Dragon SpaceX Depart Burn 1 is complete and nominal. We hope you guys had a wonderful time on the station, and we're looking forward to seeing your smiling faces in person. As a reminder, ground will deactivate the big loop following the approach ellipsoid exit, which is coming up soon.
All that, Siva, and to our gracious and endearing hosts of Expedition 70, Andy, Satoshi, Laurel, and Hardy, Koldia, Kostya, and Nastayashi Kosmonauts Oleg. Thank you for all you did for us. We couldn't have done it without you. Laurel, I'm sorry, and Jaws and Laurel, there's some peanut butter waiting for you in the airlock entrance on the forward side. Enjoy.
You just heard some nice words between the teams here on the ground and the Axiom Mission 3 crew currently on their way home.
Dragon, a couple of other reminders. You are go for suit DOF per 4.012. Ground is going to take the cameras external shortly. And feel free to call us if you need a conference or just if you want to show us the view out the window.
Deal. Suit doffing is in work.
We just heard confirmation that the crew can begin removing their suits for their journey home and help them get a little bit more comfortable. It'll be a long journey for a splashdown on Friday, February 9th. The Dragon vehicle is now a little more than 250 meters away from the space station and continuing
Station Houston
to track
on the
further.
Big Loop. Dragon Freedom has exited the Keep Out Sphere. Safe travels, Axiom 3.